you?
I'm doing great.
I'd like to ask you what your life was like before you had treatment for sleep apnea.
I'm assuming you meant the few years before the treatment. Well, for one thing, I snort quite heavily. I was, for example, I went on a motorcycle camping trip with a bunch of friends, and I was in a tent. In the morning, I woke up, stuck my head out of the tent, and found that everybody else moved their tents away from me because because of the loud snoring. And another time, we had a house guest who said, "Oh boy, you must have bears here in LA." And I go, "No, why do you say that?" I said, "I've been hearing a bear outside the house all night." And I said, "No, that was me snoring." And then leading up to the point of treatment, I was getting increasingly tired during the day. And then finally I awoke one day to find myself stopped at a red light, and I don't know how long I was at that light. And I just fell asleep while waiting for the light to change. And I said, something is wrong and I need to see a doctor. And that's where the diagnosis and treatments began.
Reality, huh?
Yeah, instead of crashing into something.
Yeah, really. So what was life like after the treatment?
Well, it made a world of difference because then I could get a good night's sleep. I do still have some residual effect called excessive daytime sleepiness, which is known as EDS. So I find myself that most days I either have to take a nap for about an hour, hour and a half, or that I have to take a Nuvigil, which is a pill that was made for people with narcolepsy, and that keeps me up. But it's so much better with the CPAP every night than it had been before.
Great. What has worked for you as far as your treatment and becoming used to it?
Well, I took to the CPAP right away. Initially, I had a nasal mask, and it worked great at the beginning, and then it started not working. And then I realized that what was happening was I was breathing through my mouth and bypassing the mask. And so I got a full face mask, and I wear that every night. The only downside of that, besides feeling I have an octopus on my face, is that when I go to a dermatologist for my yearly exam, they take one look at my face and goes, "You wear a CPAP." And they could tell that just from marks on my face that when I take the mask off in the morning, you can see the marks, but they pretty much go away after a short amount of time. But dermatologists notice those things.
So what has not worked for you as far as things that you've tried?
Well, like I said, it's the excessive daytime sleepiness, and I can't understand why that happens, and I have not been able to get an answer from my ENT. I think he doesn't know, and maybe medical science doesn't know why it happens. But the fact that the Nuvigil that I take on its labeling, besides being for narcolepsy, is also for people who have sleep apnea and they're under treatment. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that must have that same problem.
Under the radar,
Yeah.
If you had some advice to give for a new patient, what would that advice be?
Well, I've actually given advice when I've detected, I'm retired now, but when I was working with people, and I've noticed that people seem sleepy at work, and I just have this feeling they have apnea. I start saying, "By the way, do you snore?" And he goes, "Yeah, how'd you know?" And especially if they happen to have a thicker neck. And I said, I tell them I have sleep apnea, and I tell them that they may or may not have it. I'm not a doctor, but it can't hurt to have a sleep test. And I also tell them if they do have sleep apnea, it increases their risk of heart attack or stroke, and so it's in their interest to do it. And so I tell them, get diagnosed. If you do have it, you know, go for the treatment. It's cumbersome, I know, but the results are worth it.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today, Paul.
Well, thank you for having me.